Now, just before we move on to the next video, which is about method overloading, there is still another small logical problem in our conditions in the program that we've been currently working on. Now, if you carefully check the else statement, the if-else statement in the calculate high score position, just come down and have a look there, scroll that down. So down here, starting from line 65, so firstly, the first part of the condition is checking to see up here, this first one, if player score is greater than or equal to 1000. And if that's false, then obviously score isn't greater than 1000. So in other words, when the first condition is false, what that means is the score is less than 1000. So we get anywhere past that, if that's true, these scores down here, we know for a fact that they aren't greater than 1000 because we've returned false there. But note in the second if, we're checking over here to see whether the player score is less than 1000. But again, if we manage to get to this line, we know already that the player score is less than 1000, otherwise we wouldn't have got to that line. So the bottom line here is that we can remove that condition since it's always true. In other words, because the condition before, this one at the top, we've already established that the player score greater than or equal to 1000 was false. So it gets to this code here, in other words. And if you've got the latest IntelliJ, if you hover over here, it will actually tell you, condition there, player score less than 1000 is always true when reached. So in other words, when we get to this line again, the condition's already true, so there's no reason to check that condition again. So what we should do is remove that, and the same goes for the second condition there. We've got the same problem there, because we're checking to see whether the score is greater than or equal to 500 here, and we only get to this group of code if we know that the player score is less than 500. So that's telling us that's a redundant bit of code as well. So I'm going to remove both those parts, up to and including the ampersand, the 2 ampersands for the and delete that as well. And if we actually run this app now, you can see we've still got the same results than what we got in the last video. The bottom line is that we don't have to check the extra condition again, since that condition will always be true when it reached that line of code. But keep in mind that this challenge can be written in many different ways. You don't have to match every single line with my solution, but it should work the same as per the challenge text, and you should get the same results, in other words. And you can also remove the else statement and have a return after the closing curly brace. The code will behave the same in that scenario. So let's do that just to be consistent there. So at the moment we've got this else code here. So what we could do, instead, we could actually remove that. I could just delete that code. The easiest way to do that would be just to delete the else there and delete this extra code brace and put that down there like so. So basically now we haven't got another else. So if those 3 conditions end up being false, it drops down to here, then we're just going to return 4 anyway. Just to make sure that, we'll run it to make sure we've got the same results. And you can see we've still got the same results showing. Alright, now before I end the video, I want to show you one more solution that actually eliminates multiple return statements. Multiple return statements can be confusing for people starting out in a programming language. So let's instead make our code easy to follow and use only one return statement. So what I'm going to do to achieve that is I'm going to start by commenting out the code here, all this code, up to and including the return 4, comment that out. And what we can do, instead of having these multiple return statements that were there, return 1, return 2, return 3, and return 4, we're going to assume it will return 4. So what we can do is, by starting the code, I'm going to come down here and start typing. I'm going to do an int position equals 4 to start out with. And we're doing that because we're assuming position 4 will be returned. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come down to the next line, we're going to put if, parentheses, player score is greater than or equal to 1000. And we're going to type in code block position equals 1. And you can probably guess now, hopefully, what I'm going to do for the rest of the code. I'm going to put else if, parentheses, player score is greater than or equal to 500, and open a code block position equals 2. And we're going to put another else there. And the else is going to be else if, parentheses, player score is greater than or equal to 100. Open a code block, put position equals 3. Then the last statement we now need to add is the return statement that actually returns the value, but instead of typing a fixed number, we're going to type return position, because we've already calculated the position to be either the values 1, 2, 3 or 4, depending on the player's score. So let's actually run this. And as you can see again, we've got the same results here, but with different code. And that's just confirming the fact that there's almost always multiple ways to solve a particular challenge and to code a particular method in Java or in any programming language. So what's actually happening here with this code that we've written is that we've got a variable that we've set based on the condition, and we're returning the value of the position variable. So therefore, we've only got one return statement instead of having 4 return statements as we did in the now commented out code. So many developers find this easier to read and follow, and certainly I would say for beginners, it is most likely easier because there's only one return statement to think about. So at the beginning of our method, calculate high score position, on line 76, we're setting position to 4. And that's because if none of the conditions are true in our testing, with the code on lines 78 through 84, then the 4 is going to be returned because we initially set it to 4 and the position variable wasn't changed in value. So based on the condition variable, we'll get a different value, and then that value will be returned with the code on line 86. So basically, in case the player's score is greater than or equal to 1000, position set to 1. If the player's score is greater than or equal to 500, it's going to be set to 2. Otherwise, if the player's score is greater than or equal to 100, the position's 3. And of course, we determined on line 76 that position was 4 initially, so that will be the default. So if all 3 of these conditions end up being false, then position will stay with the value of 4, and then that will be returned. Alright, so that's like a bug fix and an alternative way to do things. And again, I just really want to make it very clear that there are multiple ways to solve problems in computing. So don't be too concerned if your code looks different to mine. The main thing is that when you run it, it performs the same, it gets the same results. That's really the key thing here. And as I've shown you that there are certainly many ways to solve a particular problem. Alright, so that's methods. I hope you got a lot out of it. I'll see you in the next video.